To create the best displays in my garden, I love to choose plants that provide colour, interest and impact over the longest time possible. In this video I'm concentrating on foliage, plants with colourful leaves, often variegated ones. And as a bonus, many of these do have a flowering season too, like this Brunnera Jack Frost, perfect for a shaded spot, or Euphorbia Ascot Rainbow. And this makes these plants even more valuable to add to your garden displays. Long-lasting colour and interest is my aim, and to this end my 10 foliage favourites provide a permanent presence to my displays and often a backdrop to set off their flowering companions, creating a garden that looks good throughout the year. Do check out part 1 of this video series 2, you'll find it on my YouTube channel, as it highlights 10 of my flower favourites for long-lasting colour, like enchanting astrantias that bees adore, buddleia that will bring in the butterflies, wonderful long-lasting dahlias that keep flowering through summer until the end of autumn, and many more. So once you've enjoyed this video, you can find this companion video on my YouTube channel. Coming up, I'll introduce you to my favourite plants for colourful leaves and striking form, plants that have a real presence and impact, adding colour and interest with their fancy foliage. And some of these look good all year round, through spring, summer, autumn and winter. There's a striking ornamental grass that adds height to your displays, a golden leafed Japanese maple that started in a pot but I've now planted in one of my borders, and a fast growing climate that's perfect for training up an archway or pergola. But let's get started with one of my favourites for a large patio pot. And for a long season of interest, how about this little combination here? I've got a variegated yucca. This is a variety called Yucca gloriosa variegata. Variegata meaning variegated. Lovely striped leaf, golden bands down either side with a green stripe down the centre. And I've got my yuccas growing in pots. I've got one here, I've got another one at the back of the display there. My yuccas stay in the pot all year round, and I change the bedding display around it. So this summer I've got this lovely fragrant Nemesia called Wisley Vanilla that really does fill the air with this beautiful scent. Wisley Vanilla is one of my favourite Nemesia varieties. So I planted this around the edge. I've probably put about 6 plants around the edge of my yucca, planted these out once frost was over in my area, which is around about end of May, beginning of June time. Planted up the Nemesia, and this has flowered through June, July, August, September, now into September, and I've still got a lovely display of flower, and the centerpiece of the yucca just giving you that structure in the pot itself. So you could put any sort of bedding plant around the edge. If you've got some pots and you just want to put in a structural plant like a yucca, then that just gives you that form which holds that presence throughout the year. I could put petunias around it, I could put any sort of bedding plant around the outside, but I do think Nemesias look particularly good. And then in the autumn I'll actually cut these Nemesia back and try and protect them in pots in my greenhouse over the winter, and if you're lucky they can get through the winter and I can replant them next year. But otherwise I could replace them for next year. But that's not the end of the story. Because you've cleared the Nemesia out in the autumn, I've cleared up some space and I can replant with something which provides colour through the late autumn, winter and early spring months. And that will be something for me like a little dwarf viola, or maybe some winter flowering pansies, something like that I can plant around the outside to give me colour when I haven't got the Nemesia here. So the yucca stays in my pot all year round, and I'll change the bedding plant display around it. So I've got those 2 seasons. I've got the summer colour from some sort of summer bedding plant, and I've got some winter and spring colour from a different variety. That way this single pot really does earn its keep on my patio to provide some colourful displays throughout the year. And when you're thinking about long-lasting colour, In addition to the flowers, don't forget foliage. In addition to the perennials, don't forget shrubs. And this is a little dwarf, compact Dogwood variety, a cornus variety. This is called Kelsey's Gold. I've grown this for many, many years now. Only grows to probably, and I keep it pruned back in the spring, but it only grows to a couple of foot or so in height and produces this lovely display of golden leaves through the whole of the year. As we move into autumn, the foliage itself will take on some beautiful autumn colours too. The stems can look attractive, so I'll leave, as with many dogwoods, leave those stems on for the winter, but right at the end of the winter, the spring, I'll cut those stems back to a little crown of woody stems at the base, and then you'll get the new growth growing up through the spring. And those woody stems you can use to take hardwood cuttings to propagate even more of your cornus varieties. So Kelsey's Gold, I love it at the front of my border. I've got a nice sedum called Mr. Goodbud growing alongside, and that just acts as a nice foil in the display here. So low growing, good at the front of a border, beautiful gold colour, shines out on a bit of a dull day like I've got today. Gold is lovely to have in the colour, and the display of golden foliage like this, which looks good right the way through the year, right the way through autumn too, is certainly something I'd recommend adding to your borders. But of course there are other cornus varieties, and going up from Kelsey's Gold, I've got another variegated leaf cornus at the back of this display. This forms a really large backdrop to my main border. I didn't cut it back too much last year, so I've let those stems grow up. They produce a lovely variegated leaf, a green leaf with a beautiful creamy margin on it. So these variegated cornus do look lovely, and for the winter display, that lovely deep red stem. These red stemmed dogwoods can look gorgeous through the winter. If you just want to maintain this shrub in more compact proportions, then I would prune it hard back at the end of winter, beginning of spring. I would cut all of that growth right the way back down, and you'll get new shoots coming up from the base, tall stems which will produce leaves, but you won't enjoy the flowers and fruit. These really only develop on old stems, on more mature wood. But if you're just interested in foliage and you want something of manageable proportions, just keep your dogwoods pruned back and you can enjoy those in your display. So even in this little border here, a nice compact Kelsey's Gold and a backdrop for beautiful dogwood to provide more colour and interest right the way through the year. For foliage interest, I do like Miscanthus. One of the ornamental grasses that I grow in a large pot on my patio. As with many grasses, they will die down completely in the winter, so you won't have a display to enjoy, although you could leave some old stems on just to provide a little bit of structure in your borders. But really all of that growth needs to be pruned away before you get the new shoots coming up in the spring, and then the new shoots will grow up, and as we move through summer into autumn, these stems will get taller and taller. This lovely variegated variety of Miscanthus is one of many. You can get taller ones. This one, which I think is called Gold Breeze, is quite compact. So probably grown to about 5 foot or so in height in my pot, be a little bit shorter in the border itself. You can get taller varieties, and you can get many other varieties of Miscanthus too. So certainly one I'd recommend for putting in a patio pot. And on my patio, set off here against this beautiful dark leafed Physocarpus. This is Physocarpus diabolo. Lovely dark foil, beautiful variegated golden grass set off, and it just gives you some structure and some form, something a little bit bolder to put on your patio. The flowering plants are wonderful, but sometimes foliage wins out and steals the show. So a few pots of variegated grasses added to your displays provide that good strong structural element. that add some extra interest to your patio. Ornamental grasses need pruning in winter before they start growing, so don't delay pruning things like the Japanese bloodgrass, Imperator rubra, that forms a lovely pot plant with its beautiful red stems and leaves. Or Miscanthus, lots of varieties of the Miscanthus sabrinus which will grow well in ornamental pots. These need to be pruned in winter too. And the way to prune them is to cut all of this growth that developed last year right down to its base. So all of these stems can be cut off just above compost level if they're in a pot, or soil level if they're in a border. Cut all of this growth away, and this clears the decks, getting rid of last year's growth. And you'll notice through to the end of winter into the beginning of spring, you'll start getting some new shoots. There's a few slightly greeny bits already at the base of some of these shoots, but what you don't want to do is to delay. If you delay pruning, you'll have new shoots coming up through this old growth, which makes pruning a really tricky job, trying to cut out the old and not damage the new. So there we are, a few little new fronds already developing. That's pruned. I really hope you're enjoying this video, and if you are, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. That helps me produce even more inspiring videos just for you. But I grow other ornamental grasses in pots too. I've got this lovely little Hacknacloa. This is the golden Hacknacloa, which is Hacknacloa albo-aurea. Beautiful habit. I can remember the first time I saw this plant growing, I think at the Chelsea Flower Show. Adrian Bloom with the blooms of Bressingham stands with beautiful hardy perennials and ornamental grasses, and Adrian had planted this lovely Hacknacloa in a pot. And so this will get bigger, it will spread as the years go by. If you can plant generously, put 3 or 5 in a big pot, and the habit means that these shoots will grow up and the leaves will arch over to create a beautiful feature that just sways gently in the summer breeze. It is lovely, good companion for gold breeze alongside. So this is one grass which I'm enjoying growing in a pot. Only got it this year, so it's going to get bigger and better as the years go by. Again, it will die down completely in the winter, so I'll cut all of these stems down to compost level, and I'll get a new froth of leaves coming up next summer to enjoy. And the other grass I've got is this one called Imperator, and this is Imperator Red Baron. It has a leaf which can change from green to that beautiful deep red, and it looks lovely as an ornamental grass. I've just put one in the centre of this pot. Again, the clump will get wider and bigger as the years go by, but it doesn't grow too tall and just produces a lovely display of grasses. So if you want some foliage interest to enhance your flower displays on your patio, check out these, the Miscanthus, the Imperator, or maybe even a lovely little pot like this Hacknacloa. Something to enjoy and to add extra interest to your patio and enhance your other displays. Do you fancy growing a really nice ornamental tree in your garden? Well, this is one I've had for years. It started off actually in a patio pot, and as it grew larger, I decided to plant it out in full view of the house with its beautiful golden leaves. This is a variety of Japanese maple. It's an Acer variety, and this is called Acer shirasawanum aureum. Aureum meaning golden, because it's got this beautiful broad golden leaves. Now in the spring the bud starts to unfurl, and as the new leaves burst out of these beautiful rich pink buds, the leaves open and they broaden as we move through spring into summer. Now it grows well in full sun as I've got it here, but it tolerates some shade as well. If it is in a very open exposed site, then the leaves can dry out and scorch. You must make sure that it's got plenty of water at the root. Watering well during dry weather, good mulch of organic material and compost around the base will keep it looking healthy. There are lots of different varieties of Japanese maples that form perfect small trees for small gardens. Good in patio pots when they're very young, but probably finding a permanent position for them as they get a little bit older. Now, as with all Japanese maples, they start to flower through the spring, and then these flowers turn into seed pods, the typical maple seed pods, little umbrellas you might have seen on sycamore trees that kids will throw up in the air and let them circle down to the ground. And this Acer Shirasawanum aureum also produces these beautiful little seed pods too. But it's a lovely ornamental tree. I've never pruned it. Doesn't need any sort of annual pruning at all, but obviously if a shoot gets out of place you could trim it back as it's needed. Just watering, feeding with a good multi-purpose feed in spring to boost the new growth, and you'll enjoy a lovely feature tree like this. Now these acers or Japanese maples form lovely feature trees for small gardens. When they're small you can keep them in a pot. As they get bigger, plant them out, and I think they're best if you can find a permanent position for them in the garden. They look lovely through from spring when the new leaves unfurl right the way through to autumn, and before the leaves fall in autumn they take on the most beautiful fiery colours of burnt amber and orange, transforming the plant before the leaves fall and it goes dormant for the winter. So here we have a wonderful tree for any garden really, a Japanese maple, Acer Shirasawanum aureum. I've got quite a few shrubs in my garden, good hardy plants like Physocarpus diabolo, a deciduous shrub with gorgeous deep colourful leaves. I planted it alongside my patio to provide a backdrop to the patio pot displays. It's got lobed leaves that develop a deep chocolatey purple colour. Lovely for setting off the brighter colours growing up from pots positioned in front of it. The border here is actually quite narrow, but the Physocarpus is an upright shrub, and I can easily snip off any shoots that grow out of place to keep it within bounds. It will start off quite short and grow over time, but my shrub has now been established for over 15 years, so it's reached its maximum size and can be maintained to about 8 to 10 foot in height with selective pruning. The dark leaves look lovely through spring, summer and autumn and provide a lovely backdrop to a range of plants that I grow in patio pots throughout the year. Physocarpus diabolo produces beautiful clusters of flowers too. In my garden, the flower heads develop through March and April, with the first white flowers opening in early May, with fully open balls of white flowers, perhaps with a touch of pink, at their very best by around the end of May and through June. These really transform the shrub, with the white flowers standing out clearly from the darker leaves of the supporting shrub. Then, as the flower heads fade, these beautiful seed heads start developing, starting with these tiny little red beads forming at the base of each faded flower. As with pruning many shrubs, I opt for a renewal pruning regime, cutting out a few of the very oldest and tallest woody stems close to their base each winter, choosing a point where a new shoot is growing out. This will grow up over the next 2 or 3 years to replace the old ones. It's a system of replacement pruning that you're after, pruning away a few of the oldest stems each year to be replaced by a few new ones with deeper coloured stems and fresh foliage. And to help with pruning, just remember that the common name for Physocarpus is Ninebark. And by looking at the stems, you can see the difference in bark colour between the new, young, deep purple stems and the older, lighter coloured ones with peeling bark. It's a proportion of these older ones that need to be pruned out each year. As I said before, in this narrow bed, I want to keep the new stems growing upright, rather like a fan in front of the boundary. So I prioritise cutting out any developing forwards towards the patio to avoid them from growing out and spilling out over the patio pots in front of them. On my garden arch, I've got a mix of a few different climbing plants. On this side, I've got the golden hop. And on this side, there's my little poodle Bella, hello Bella, is a jasmine, a summer flowering jasmine called Fiona Sunrise. Beautiful golden foliage, fragrant white flowers. As I walk through the arch, I can really smell the beautiful fragrance which comes from these little dainty white flowers which you can enjoy through summer. It's a really good, I'd call it a climbing shrub to grow up a trellis panel alongside a garden arch or something like that. As you'll see, it's already reached the top and it's growing over the top. The stems just sort of, they don't cling, but they will just twine their way through the trellis panel and give them a little bit of a helping hand through the summer as well, just to get them up to the top. The tips of these new shoots here, as you can see, you've got the flowers coming. You'll get a succession of these beautiful fragrant white flowers through the summer. It will carry those leaves right the way through to the end of the year. They'll fall in the autumn, probably October into November time, and then it's deciduous, so it will lose the leaves completely in the winter. If I get any really long straggly shoots like this coming over and getting away, just to snip them back, cut them back a little bit, but otherwise this is a really good shrub to grow alongside your garden arch. I've got it mixed in here with some honeysuckle. There's a wisteria down at the far end which flowered earlier in the year, and as I say, on the other side of my garden arch I've got the golden hop. So it's a few climbers to add colour and interest to your arch, your pergola feature, wherever you've got maybe a garden fence or some trellis panels dividing up your garden. Really good shrub to grow. Jasmine, Fiona Sunrise. Euphorbia are a really useful group of hardy perennials, and I grow several different ones in my garden, like this lovely Euphorbia Ascot Rainbow that I grow in my winter patio pots, as it carries these lovely golden green variegated leaves right through winter. However, for something deeper in colour with a lovely dark purple, almost black leaf, try Euphorbia Miner's Merlot. I've planted mine in a pot with companions including Skimmia White Globe, a Heuchera called Black Taffeta, and a variegated ivy called Golden Colibri. And doesn't Miner's Merlot look lovely just after rain, when its leaves are covered with shining beads of water which catch the light like jewels? In fact, these euphorbias look wonderful almost all year round, even in the depths of winter when their foliage is touched by frost. And as we move through into spring, these hardy perennials will start to flower, like these extending flower heads on Silver Swan, with a creamy white edge to its leaves also carried into these flowers. My local garden centre stocked a very similar variety to Silver Swan called Silver Edge, which will carry this lovely display of variegated foliage right through winter too. At around 60 centimetres tall, it's slightly shorter growing than Silver Swan, that could grow to 1 metre in height when it's in full flower, which could make a Silver Edge a slightly better choice for a patio pot display. Euphorbias love a hot, sunny side through summer, a reminder that many of these hardy perennials originate in the Mediterranean areas, growing on rocky terrain where they can tolerate dry conditions too. But for pots, which you can move around throughout the year, I find euphorbias the perfect plant to add to a combination, adding foliage interest month after month. Commonly called the Siberian bugloss, I fell in love with Brunnera Jack Frost the very first time I set eyes on it, and I hope you can see why. It was the perfect combination of frothy sprays, of bright blue flowers proudly pushing up through a low carpet of beautifully veined heart-shaped leaves, each with a delicate green edge. And while so many hardy perennial favourites are summer flowering, Brunnera Jack Frost is one to grow to kick-start your gardening year in spring. Now the soil here in my shade border can get quite dry in summer in this location, so I give my clumps a really good soaking of water every week or so during the hottest weather to keep them flourishing. This is a perennial that does like a moisture retentive soil, so dig in plenty of compost at planting time to keep it looking fresh and luscious, and you'll soon notice its leaves starting to flag if it gets dry, a clear sign that you need to get out the watering can, get out the hose and give it some water. And as with many clumps of established hardy perennials, they do benefit from being lifted and divided every 4 or 5 years or so, and I find the best time to do this is at the beginning of spring as it comes into new growth around about March into April. But once you've enjoyed those flowers and they're faded, snip off the stalks close to their base and new leaves will continue developing through the season to continue this fine foliage display right through into autumn, when all the growth can be cleared away, the plants mulched, ready for new growth to emerge in spring. My plant of the month for May is the lovely golden hop. Latin name Humulus lupulus aureus. Aureus meaning golden. It's got these beautiful golden new leaves which really do brighten up the garden through spring and into summer. The leaves gradually turn greener as you go through towards the end of the year, but this is a really valuable quick growing climber. It's a hardy perennial, so it dies down completely in the winter, and it's sometime during the winter that you'll cut off and prune away all of the old growth. All of last year's shoots get cut off at ground level, and come the spring the new growth surges up from the bottom and it self climbs, it twines its way up. I've got it growing up a trellis panel at the side of my pergola arch, but you could grow it on an archway, a fence, a pergola or somewhere else in your garden. And it's a quick growing climber, growing up through April. By the end of April into May it's already reached the top of my pergola, and it will soon clamber up over the top as well. It's got the most beautiful golden leaf, and here it contrasts so well with this lovely deep red leafed Phytinia. So you get a beautiful contrasting colour. I love quick growing climbers, and if you've got an arch in your garden, this might be one to choose. I've got it mixed in here with some honeysuckle as well, which intertwines with it, or you could mix it in with clematis or other climbers as well. It will look absolutely gorgeous. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, you'll find lots more planting suggestions in my video entitled 15 Perennials Every Garden Should Have, including the long flowering Alströmerias Havana and the beautiful pink sunshine that I think are just perfect in large patio pots. The magnificent tall and golden Rudbeckia herbston that adds height and colour at the back of any flower border. Bold and beautiful hostas that are ideal for season-long colour and impact on your patio. Striking hardy perennial Salvia amistad that flowers for months and months right through to November in my garden. And the wonderful clump-forming sedum that I think are perfect for planting in any garden, perhaps along the front of a border or even along a path. So do check out this video for more about these valuable plants and many others in my top 15 favourite perennials these are plants every garden should have. So I hope you'll find a few new ones to add to your displays and add more colour and variety to your outlook throughout the year. Thanks for watching. I hope that's given you a few fresh ideas, and if it has, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel at Adam's Gardening Guides. Thank you.